The maximum jail time is 4 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. If you're caught, again, for abuse of a vulnerable person, the max sentence is 3 years. And many of them will get out in 6 to 12 months. Our state values a dog's life more than they value the life of a intellectually developmentally delayed person or an autistic person. And that is fundamentally disgusting to me.
Welcome back to Finding Common Ground with Heather and Steve. Today's guest is coming back to give us an update. The first time Anil was on, he talked about the abuse that his son endured at the Anderson Center for Autism. Today won't be about reliving that trauma. We're going to talk about what Anil has learned since then, what has helped his family stabilize, and what other families can learn from this experience.
Yes, I wanted to add a disclaimer that this episode is not about blaming caregivers or DSPs for all the hard things that families are facing. Most DSPs are good people doing very hard work inside systems that don't support them well. Our goal here is to talk honestly about what actually makes people safer.
Absolutely. Anil, thanks for coming back. The last time you were here, your family was still very much in crisis. And before we get into systems and solutions, I just wanted to touch on how your son is doing now.
And I appreciate that. And thank you to Heather and to Steve for bringing me back to share the story of the progress for my son, as well as what we're trying to do to change this criminal ecosystem that is the special needs system here in New York State and across the country. Progress for my son has been slow. You know, he's been diagnosed with PTSD, with severe depression disorder. Obviously, this on top of his autism makes, things very, very difficult, almost, if not impossible, to help him. We were in crisis. We, brought in a massive amount of assistance. And through that process, we've had a lot of good and bad things happen. And based upon those experiences, we have decided, and we're moving forward in trying to create practical solutions, for other parents and for the system as a whole. And I'm glad to be able to share, our insights and some of the things that we're trying to accomplish today.
Yeah, because I think that when a family's in crisis, they're going to reach out and pull in the people that they are hoping will help. But when you're in that moment and things are so hard, you rely on the recommendations of other people. You believe people sometimes more because you just need that expert, the person who knows how to fill in that gap, and you want your son to feel better. Are you comfortable disclosing some of the setbacks that you ran into, or any of the things that were maybe not on the, up and up? Because I think that families need to hear some of the risks when you're bringing people in during a crisis.
Absolutely. So when we first, after my son came home, he's been hospitalized, I believe, over 4 or 5 times now. He spent multiple months, 4 to 5 months at the hospital, and he was not getting better. In fact, frankly, those types of settings make things worse for our kids because they're in an environment where they don't get individualized care. And the only thing that these institutions do is to either sedate them or to isolate them in ways so that they don't harm others or harm themselves, so forth and so on. So fundamentally, I made the decision he will never go back into that type of environment. So as we pulled him out from that environment, we were first contacted through this, community that we're in. We were made aware of, somebody who said that they were a crisis management, crisis staffing type of organization. And because we were at our wit's end, we did the preliminary due diligence and, asked them for credentials and for understanding of, why they are seen credible. But we gave them the benefit of that because they came recommended through this network of folks that we had, some trust in. Long story short, after 2 months, this person basically turned out to be a scammer, a fraudster. This person, alleged that he was a BCBA. Some of the other people in this group were BCBAs. None of them were. He, said that he was going to bring licensed, trained specialists, be it from, different types of backgrounds and strategies. They weren't. Maybe 1 out of the 4 staff people that he brought had experience in the special needs community. One of the other staff members that he brought on board was, before he arrived at my home a week before that, he was a garage mechanic in the South.
Wow.
So this guy, and let's be honest, I've been paying out of pocket, and the cost for doing this is not cheap. That particular person was charging us, I believe, close to 30. I'm thinking it was close to $3,000 a day
Oh my goodness.
for these staff, because my son needed 24-hour care. That's another thing. They promised 24/7 care, that wasn't delivered. They promised, seasoned staff, that wasn't delivered. So quickly after we, started the services, and I observed what was happening, and after we repeatedly, I mean, this is not something that it was like hey, send me your CV, send me your BCBA license certification, send me the RBT license information for these people, and we just stopped. No, we kept asking day in and day out, emails, calls, all that was done to basically say, hey, we need to know, you're in my home now. I'm paying you this ridiculous amount of money. We need to know who's in my home and what your credentials are. When that didn't come through, we fired that agency, and we fired those people. Now, coming out of that experience, I spoke, with my son's mother and said, this is, again, just another indication of this criminal ecosystem. People identify parents who are in crisis, who are emotionally distraught, who are fearful for the life of their child. And at that moment, which parent wouldn't empty their bank account to help their kid if they had the means to do so? And so this criminal ecosystem creates not just places like Anderson, not just other institutions, but it also creates this other cottage industry where people come in to exploit, parents in crisis and, really take them to the cleaners. We then said, we've worked with other people in the past. We are parents of a kid who is, been in the system for 20 years. We have seen over his lifetime what works and what doesn't work. Why don't we figure out the right model, the right systems, the right approach to address this massive need, and do it in a credible, in a honest, and an empathetic way? And, to that end, we decided to form a company called SafeCare Comprehensive Solutions. And that is what we are now focused on, to try to, build this company out with a grander vision that we can talk about more later. But we want to build this out to really provide the proper, credentialed, credible framework for support of the special needs community.
Yeah, as you build safe care, how do you prevent families from being misled? Again, you mentioned a couple of things. Is there anything else that you think you can put in place or have put in place to make sure that what happened to you previously doesn't happen again with safe care?
Yeah, so absolutely. So the number one thing that I think a lot of people realize as they either go through their career or do businesses in their life is that, it's really the people. If you identify the right people, people who are honest, people who have, a real motivation to be in this industry or to, effect change, then you can do a million things, because this is not rocket science, right? This is not something that, you need to go and study for 30 years to figure out how to properly help, such staff, such people. So the person that we, reached out to was a gentleman by the name of Jason Lantier, who has known my son since, must be at least since he was 12 years old or 13 years old, worked with him before, he went to Anderson. Jason Lantier actually also has been very instrumental in other efforts. He was involved with Love Michael. He was involved in various other initiatives. And he himself has had a therapist agency now for 15 plus years. And we approached Jason and said, Jason, this is what has happened to us. I kind of wish we had gone to him initially without, before we went to the other charlatan who basically ripped us off. And we said to Jason, there's a real need for this. Parents are in crisis. They're scared. They don't know what to do. We should put our heads together and figure out a solution, in this space. So Jason and I and my son's mother came together to form SafeCare. Now, to address, Steve, your point specifically, what do we do when we are looking at hiring people or hiring staff? Well, number one, we do a substantial background check. We do criminal. I run a credit check. We check out all their credentials. If they say they're a BCBA, I want to see the licenses. We don't just take the license number. We go to the website, verify that they've been there. I'll just give you a very crazy story. The other person who said he was a BCBA told us that his credentials were not online because prior to 2012 they didn't maintain a database. And when I first heard that, I knew right away, red flag. Then he said, oh, his paperwork was lost in Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy. And one after another type of justification for why he couldn't provide us the credentials. So again, based upon my experience and what we know are best practices, we vet our staff. We make sure that, if they're saying that they are an ABA therapist or they're DIP or if they are RBTs or if they're whatever the case may be, skip trained, we want to see the proof. We want to see that this is the reality. Second, we're not just going to be hiring people off the street and then, saying, hey, now we're going to, put you into our ecosystem. We want experienced people. I want to see somebody who's been in this industry, not for 1 year, 2 years, but for multiple years, so that I can at least assess, hey, this person is looking at this as a career, number one. Number two, this person has a track record. References, will be important for us to hear about. So there are a lot of things that, again, these are almost common sense issues, right? Common sense approaches to vetting anybody that you would either hire as an employee or as somebody coming to your home. I want to use common sense, but, on steroids. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're making sure that the people we bring in are not thugs. And I use that word thugs specifically. I spoke to a CEO of a nonprofit residential community here almost, I would say, 18 to 24 months ago. And at that time, we spoke to that person because we were looking at, this is before the abuse came out of my son, and we were looking at various residential options for him near my home here in Queens. And, the person, I was a little shocked. He was very forthright. He said to me, 30 years when I came into this industry, you had to have a bachelor's degree in special ed or some other type of related, discipline to even work as a direct service professional with the community. He said today, because of the cuts, because of the lack of support from OPWDD or the government or Medicare, you pick your poison. He said today we have to hire thugs. Those are his words, not mine. So we want to make sure that a thug never gets close to the people that we are working with, and that we want to make sure that there's proper vetting, proper oversight. The other thing that we are advocating for, and we've spoken to various parents about this, is that we want the parents to put in cameras in their homes. If we're going to provide you service in your home, I want cameras in there. In my home here, every single room except the bathroom has cameras in there, right? I don't care. There's a signs are up. You're being videotaped. Audio is being recorded. And that keeps people aware. It keeps them honest. And it also is a great tool for us, because what we can see then is, based upon this camera system, is if a behavior occurs, we can go in and take a look at the video and say, hey, what happened 5 minutes before that behavior happened? Were there signs? Was there something that could have indicated, and then what happened after the aggressive episode or the interaction happened? How did the staff members deal with it? If they dealt with it in one way, maybe we saw a way they could do it better. And it's not there to say, hey, gotcha. It's there to say, hey, you're good people. People, obviously everything is very unique. Things are moving very fast. This is what we saw from the videotape. Now we can figure out a better protocol going forward. And that's exactly what's happened. It's because of this approach of having cameras, being able to evaluate scenarios as they occur and after they occur. I think we have one of the best home systems and home support systems that we could ever create for my son. It's not perfect. We're obviously always having, some other one or another challenges because of staff or, because of life reasons. But it is something that's leagues above what is offered in anyone's, residential program. Forget about hospitals or even offered in, like places like Anderson. They don't even come close. And this again is not rocket science. This is not something that I have invented out of the blue. This is something that, we all said what makes sense for us to create a platform that allows them to effectively help my son, but also bring in the right people. Money is definitely an issue. We are committed at SafeCare to providing adequate and proper, compensation for high quality people. Right now, our pay scale for staff, depending upon the years of experience, what function they will play, in this whole system, is ranging from $30 to $60 an hour. That doesn't include the
Great.
DCBAs. DCBAs get
Mhm.
paid at a different level altogether. But we have to wake up. We can't start thinking the way that OPWDD or some of these other privately nonprofits operate, which is, hey, let me get away with trying to pay $18 an hour, or let me get away with trying to bring in an international scholar from a overseas country, paying them $1,000 stipend per month, give them a bed in a dormitory, and effectively pay them only $5 or $6 an hour at the end of the day. That doesn't work. And you know what the funny thing is, that most of these international scholars, they're very high quality people to be able to get over here. And many of them who've come here are shocked, absolutely shocked at the state of our criminal ecosystem in this country for special needs people.
I bet. And it's making me think what you're saying, Anil, is radically different because you're not just protecting our loved ones with this model. You're protecting the caregiver, the DSP. That camera is documenting things that show they were following the protocol. They did take the
Right.
steps. Maybe things went really fast and things went off the rails. And that perspective and that mindset, that's what shifts it from like a punitive consequence model where people are trying to not get in trouble. So they hide things to, oh my goodness, let's watch the tape. Let's look at that. Let's see where, things fell apart. What can we do different? So I award that, that's a wonderful way to move forward. I want to dig into why families and DSPs are so scared of speaking up because that fear of retaliation is just so strong. Sometimes they think it's actually the safer option not to rock the boat. Can you shed some light on that?
100%. And, I guess one way that maybe my son was lucky in this whole process is that I personally don't fear retaliation, right? I look for these types of problems to solve. I don't shy away from this. My ex-wife and I made a conscious decision that we were going to give up our anonymity in this process. We didn't care because, yes, we needed to get justice for my son, but frankly, we need to get justice for all the other people who are in this criminal ecosystem, who are getting abused, raped, broken bones, black eyes, you name it. We need to get justice for them. So, yes, parents are scared. It's funny. I just had a conversation last night with a parent who informed me of the long laundry list of abuse that was happening, with their child. And their child was probably hours away from death from dehydration. And if they hadn't picked up their child, on a Friday night to take him home and noticed all of the physical manifestations of abuse, bruises on their body, and, coupled with the fact that there was no communication from the agency or from the residents. And when they took their child to the ER to save him, and he was given, I think 2 bags or 3 bags of IV to get just his levels back up to normal or near normal, the institution blamed the dehydration on them. Hey, you had your kid for 24 hours. You somehow caused the dehydration. Now, what do parents in that type of situation do? Because, many don't have the financial means to bring their child home. Many don't have the financial means to be able to hire medical staff or other staff at home. So they're faced with what? They're faced with the the prospect of, do I take my child? Do I make noise? Do I make a commotion? Do I alert the media? Do I alert law enforcement? If I do, guess what? These institutions are known to blacklist families. They're known to blacklist kids. They're known to blacklist parents. I know another family that was blacklisted in New York State and had to take their child to Massachusetts, for a residential program. And then they brought them back, to New York. This is idiotic. This is mind-blowing that this kind of stuff is allowed to happen in our country. And unfortunately, it's because, I think really that government doesn't really care. Politicians don't care. The state doesn't care. Why? Because our kids are not going to be getting jobs, especially the ones who are profoundly, afflicted, who may have been nonverbal, who can't be left alone. So they're not going to be paying taxes in the future. They're not going to be voting for these politicians, right? Who is going to, help a group of people unless they get a benefit? And that seems to be the ethos of most politicians. One of the most disgusting facts in New York State is that if you're caught for dogfighting in New York State, the maximum jail time is 4 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. If you're caught, again, for abuse of a vulnerable person, the max sentence is 3 years. And many of them will get out in 6 to 12 months. If that doesn't communicate, to your audience, to the parents listening to this, to the community, to the public listening to this, of the upside down nature of what we place value on. We don't place value on human beings who are vulnerable, who may have these difficulties. Our state values a dog's life more than they value the life of a intellectually developmentally delayed person or an autistic person, and that is fundamentally disgusting to me.
I agree. It just makes me feel sick to think about how off balance it is. And even if a legislator truly cares, they're kind of trapped in this system that doesn't move. It's so cumbersome and it's so big. And you could talk to the sweetest, most caring person, in a government office who is supposed to be supporting you, but you just can tell they're blocked. And
Yeah.
I think that's what parents feel it over and over again. I'm going through the right channels. I'm talking to the people on top. Why isn't there any movement? What you're saying, Anil, is instead of waiting for them to get it right, you and your son's mom are doing the work. You're vetting the people. You're initiating it. Now, not everybody is going to have those resources. Not everybody is going to have the same bandwidth as you. So creating SafeCare gives, it gives people this like packaged program, the support that can uplift them when they need it. But I want to spend one more minute on the idea that this amount of abuse and harm is happening in New York. Steve, I know this is like something that we've talked about a bunch of times because there are safeguards in place.
Yeah. Look, there's inspections and audits. A lot of times they're staged. I've been in there. I met my wife in a nonprofit facility. We know what goes on in those places. I could go on and on and on about the abuse going on in foster care systems, including foster care homes. And it just, it's never ending. And like you said, Heather, unfortunately, the politics aren't there to even move it because, look, yeah, when you have a problem, it's just like an alcoholic. If you don't admit you have a problem, it's not going to get fixed and it's never going to move forward. And too many times they don't think there's a problem and there is. And these provider agencies and these facilities, I'm not saying they're all covering up or not doing the right thing, but I can tell you one thing. What I've seen in so many different agencies, even in upstate New York here, is there is no oversight or very little. And even when there is, I don't feel comfortable with how they do it because, again, I have personally seen staged visits or when staff even knows when they're coming.
Yes.
For a visit, which is very telling. So Look, we have a lot of work to do. Anil, I think your program is right on the money. And
Well, Steve, just to that particular point, we have this criminal ecosystem that puts lipstick on a pig. That's basically what you have to think about. They'll, for example, Anderson is a 90-acre campus with 12 homes, a beautiful, community center, and a pool outside. Yet, how many cases of abuse, of violating, the human rights of these individuals happens there? How much discrimination happens? And you know what the sad thing is, that because parents may be afraid to report for retaliation, because DSPs who do a hard job and are also afraid of losing their job, of losing their ability to pay for their rent, the food on their table, being able to take care of their kids, they may not report it. Also, we need to create courage, not only on the side of parents, but on the side of DSPs and other caregivers. And the only way we can create courage in them is that if we show them that if they, speak up, justice will be done. Justice will not be done by organizations like the Injustice Center. I have renamed the Justice Center the Injustice Center. It's ridiculous the way that system has been set up. It was basically set up to quiet and to shut down discussions and protests that were happening at the time that Andrew Cuomo created that platform. It's crazy that I recently reached out to the Justice Center and said, hey, I want to get the report you had put together for my son. They told me, you need to contact Anderson for that report. I go, really?
What?
I need to contact the perpetrator who abused my son for a report and an investigation criteria that the Justice Center, has put together? And again, to your point, Heather, the woman was very nice, very empathetic on the phone, because yes, that's the way it is structured here. Those are the rules. That's the platform. So I don't know if that's a indication of, one person scratching the other person's back, or one institution scratching the other institution's back and trying to keep things, in-house. But it is quite telling and quite shocking that this is the kind of system we have in place. And remember, the Justice Center, what's its mandate, as everybody understands, is to investigate allegations of abuse. They even have ex-law enforcement people there to investigate. They shouldn't have no connection. There should be no nexus between the Justice Center and the perpetrators of these crimes. And yet that seems to be exactly what is the case out there. We need to give courage to families. We need to have parents understand that, whatever their kid has suffered, their child has suffered, if they don't speak up, other kids are going to suffer that. And I will bring it back home. We did a hell of a lot of due diligence before we sent my son to the Anderson Center for Autism, which I think should be relabeled the Anderson Center for Abuse. We did months and months, if not years, of due diligence. We spoke to lawyers in New York City. We spoke to other parents who had kids over there, so forth and so on. And so we got a general picture. We also, learned about, that poor kid, Jonathan. That was the reason that Jonathan's Law was passed, who started out his path of abuse at Anderson. But we were told, hey, Anderson learned from its mistakes. They have put in proper safety protocols. It's a whole different animal today. Well, after my son was abused and other parents reached out, we come to understand that there was not one, two, but there were dozens of cases that were never reported. There were dozens of cases that may not have gone through the criminal justice system. There were dozens of cases that did not have any type of civil case filed. And because that wasn't in the public record, we weren't made aware of it. We would not have sent him to the Anderson Center for Abuse if we had known of their track record. And by the way, since my son's story came out, I believe there have been at least 3 other abuse cases at Anderson, one in which the caregiver put a pillow over the face of the child. And I will double check that, but that is what has happened just since my son's abuse case came out.
So they're not learning from their mistakes. I mean, that's very apparent that the system is not set up to make things, identifiable. Thank you so much, Anil, for sharing this. We're out of time with this episode, so I hope everybody tunes in for part 2, where we continue the discussion.
Parents, you have to become the zealous advocates for your kids, because no one else is going to be a more zealous advocate than you. So you have to approach this as if from day one, the minute you see something happening, you are preparing for a lawsuit or a criminal action.
Continue the conversation by joining our Facebook group. If you're a fan of the show, please join our supporters club. Subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your favorite listening app, but most of all, share it with your friends. Just one more click or comment can make a huge difference and help us to continue finding common ground.